Professor Alex van der Heever from the Wits University School of Governance joins us now to unpack more, of course, to forecast the State of the Nation address that's coming up later on this week. Prof. van der Heever, good afternoon, good evening, rather. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it. President Ramaphosa has fashioned himself out to be a reformist of sorts and has introduced these large-scale undertakings to reform certain institutions of government and style of governance, really. Operation Vulindlela being a flagship undertaking, for instance. Have we seen that sort of reform actually take shape, and are we beginning to see at all any of the results and dividends bearing from it?
Well, I think we see some benefits from Operation Vulindlela, but effectively we're treading water because we are not where we should be as a country, and the plans that have been developed in the past haven't really borne fruit. And we're dealing with what appears to be systematic problems in state performance, which is related to corruption, which is related to things that the president does control and the political party is empowered to control, which is the appointments of people into senior positions who are essentially directly responsible for corruption and state failure, which is then having knock-on effects on performance, knock-on effects on wasted government expenditure, and building up South Africa's government debt, which is basically a recipe for moving us into a fiscal debt spiral. So I think we've got a lot of problems to deal with. I don't think that we've really got to the heart of the things that seriously need attention in South Africa. And the question really is whether the president has got the political courage to deal with those issues going forward in this financial year.
Let's take a look at some of those indices that you cite there and whether or not we've been turning the leaf on any of them. Unemployment is still staggeringly high. A third of the country is unemployed, and that's on the narrow definition. On the expanded definition, it's nearly half of the country being unemployed, particularly exacerbated amongst young people. Economic growth has been lower than population growth normally for the last 10 years. But more importantly, we've seen, forecasts going downwards in the last 3 years of economic growth. 0.6% 2 years ago, 0.9% just last year, 1.4% projected for this year, but we don't know if that will be achieved, perhaps so with the commodities boom that we've recently seen. And then, of course, the debt spiral that you're speaking about. We've got this budget deficit that we can't seem to arrest, and our debt to GDP ratio is north of 77% and seemingly continuously running away from us. Given that context, is reformism still the path that the 7th administration under President Ramaphosa should be undertaking, and how should he then frame that in the State of the Nation address?
Well, I think what he's been doing up until this point is anything but systemic and structural reform. So if we had to look at one of the reasons why we have low economic growth, that is, it's the poor performance of the state, which has impacted on our ability to deliver on infrastructure, to ensure that there is investment in South Africa. Whether or not we have a commodities boom depends or be able to benefit from a commodities boom depends on whether or not we've got mining investment in South Africa. And that depends on how we're regulating the mining industry. And we have been particularly poor at getting the mining industry to develop further. But we're also falling behind on manufacturing. So our industrial policy is not well developed. And well, there are no results to speak of other than, again, treading water. So it's concerning. So from a socioeconomic perspective, it becomes very difficult to build social cohesion in South Africa if you're running fiscal deficits, if you're spending your funds badly, if the state infrastructure is essentially in decline because of how you're spending your infrastructure money. You're allowing corruption in the tenders for infrastructural investment all the way through, whether or not it's the central and investments or whether or not it's provincial or municipal investments. All of that has not been systematically addressed. And a large part of it will be the corruption that has effectively been allowed to continue. Because if we look at the Mandlanga Commission, we see how the Hawks, the police, the National Prosecuting Authority have essentially failed to hold our, to deal with the incredible corruption in the state, which is the most important and critical one to deal with. So if we can't deal with that, then we end up with corrupt people in top positions who are not interested in delivery at the end of the day. They're lining their pockets.
Yeah.
So capacity and delivery requires that we prosecute people at the top, and therefore we have to have functional state institutions that can prosecute people and put them in jail. At this point in time, we are not succeeding at just that.
What does an ambitious program of government look like, and how do we match the capacity and capability to meet that?
An ambitious one, with a big signal, would be to halve the size of cabinet for a start. Reprioritize the use of resources in the VIP protection services back into the police, change the top structure and leadership of the police, change how the people are appointed into SARS, into the National Prosecuting Authority, the commissioners of police, etc., so that they're independent of political interference, so that they can carry on and basically arrest and put away the people who are stealing money from the state, and then things like the Public Finance Management Act can work. If we had to look at our rail network that we have today, it is arguably, functionally, at the same level it was 100 years ago. And that is appalling for what we should have done over the last 30 years. We should have a magnificent, top-of-the-range rail network, not bullet trains, but working trains, working for both freight as well as for passenger rail. None of those are working effectively. So the remedial action that has come through Operation Vulindlela, etc., is remedial, not bold, not systemic, not structural. It's tiptoeing around the things that we need to do. And that is essentially because it has been politically too difficult for the president to actually address the things that are causing trouble in South Africa and harming economic growth, and therefore causing unemployment, inequality, and a decline in social cohesion in South Africa.
Prof. Alex van der Heever, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure speaking to you, talking to us there from the Wits School of Governance.